Penn State wrestling beats Nebraska 22-13. They're the Big Ten regular season champs, but they lost 4 out of 10 bouts in this one. Is that a cause for concern going into the postseason tournaments when this Nittany Lion team is trying to rewrite wrestling history?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Penn State fans? That is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, bringing you all things Penn State Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. And if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest analysis and conversations around your favorite Penn State teams. Talking more than just football on the show. Talking wrestling, men's basketball, men's hockey, recruiting, you name it. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Penn State defeats Nebraska 22-13. And if you're watching this show all week leading up to this dual meet, you knew this was going to be a good one. You knew this one was going to be a showdown, and you knew that Nebraska was going to keep it respectable, keep it close. I mean, hats off to Penn State. Another Big Ten title in the books, the regular season conference champions. Now you go into the postseason. Of course, you still have Edinburgh, but you look forward to the Big Ten tournament and the NCAAs. But is there concern after losing 4 individual bouts to Nebraska? You win the dual meet 22-13, but I think about the losses here. Braden Davis, no Aaron Nagao, Tyler Kasak, Bernie Truax. The answer is no. If honestly, you should feel better about this team. Okay, yes, those were 4 losses, but let's put them all into perspective here. And I don't think there is any concern going into the postseason for the Big Ten tournament and the NCAAs, and I will explain why. Edinburgh will be a nice tune-up match for the Nittany Lions, depending on who wrestles and everything for the senior match, right? Final home match, final home dual meet of the season. But for Penn State to drop those matchups, whether it was at 184 Bernie Truax and Lenny Pinto, Tyler Kasak against the number 1 wrestler at 149 in Ridge Lovett, and then you have Braden Davis, who was a surprising defeat the way it happened. I thought that Braden Davis might struggle in this one, but it turned into a major decision, which was, and especially at the end like that against Caleb Smith, that wasn't what you would like to see going into the later part of the season. So why I'm not all that concerned with these losses is because outside of Braden Davis's performance, Truax wrestled incredibly well, given that he's been on a less of a dominant streak. You would like to have seen more out of Truax over the past couple of weeks here, maybe even going back over the span of a month. Bernie Truax could have easily won that match. It was close, the no call, and that he didn't have full control at the end of the bout there. Lenny Pinto is a different type. Like, he's truly a top 3 wrestler. He should be in the semifinals, both in the Big Ten titles and as well as NCAAs. But for Truax to go down there at the wire, maybe if he had, I think, 10 seconds more in that dual meet, in that bout, that he could have pulled the come from behind victory and beaten a Lenny Pinto. Tyler Kasak, the number 1 wrestler at 149. And it came all the way down to the final seconds before Ridge Lovett. This is a veteran in college wrestling. Tyler Kasak, a true freshman who wasn't expected to start in the lineup this year, but then the absence of Shane Van Ness. And look what you have here. You have a clear-cut top 10 wrestler, but top 10 doesn't get you into All-America status. But the way that Tyler Kasak wrestled, you think there would be a distance between number 1 versus number 9, and there wasn't. Tyler Kasak was right there with him. He is a true freshman, first year in the program, and against Ridge Lovett, that was impressive. No Aaron Nagao. And the reason I'm not, so Aaron Nagao, maybe it's an illness, maybe it's an injury. I think a day off in this case was good for him. I hope he's okay. I don't know what's wrong, but I hope he's okay. I think this part of the season where you're on a bit of a cold streak and whatever's going on, whatever you're dealing with behind the scenes, because we knew that he had an illness earlier in the season. And now who knows what's going on. But Aaron Nagao hasn't wrestled at his best. That's the point. Aaron Nagao, for him to have this dual meet off, maybe he gets a little bit of a tune-up before Edinburgh, again, just to kind of correct things before you go into the Big Ten tournament. And that's where he turned it on a season ago. Aaron Nagao was at his best in the postseason, so it's about the coaching staff knows what they're doing. So Baylor Shunk, going up against a Jacob Van D, who would have been this would have been a good test for Aaron Nagao to see where he is, because he's probably going to face Jacob Van D at some point, whether it's most likely the Big Ten tournament, maybe even NCAAs. And Jacob Van D is a young wrestler as well, so he's going to hit his turning point, his stride later in the season, since he is getting progressively more acclimated with the speed of college wrestling. And that's going to be the same point for Braden Davis here. But if you're worried about, what's going on with Aaron Nagao, I think this was just a day of rest. Get some things right behind the scenes, and then he will be back in the lineup and ready to go for the postseason. And then Braden Davis, again, 11-3, the last second part of it, right? It just kind of seeing fatigued. Caleb Smith, clearly an experienced wrestler, right? A graduate senior for Nebraska. And Braden Davis, I guess, had some chances, but it felt like Caleb Smith was in control. And it's not to harp on what Braden Davis can or can't do, but there's definitely a disadvantage when it comes to the length of these wrestlers, how tall and how long the limbs are. Braden Davis, when he goes up against longer, lengthier wrestlers in Drake Ayala, and in the case of Caleb Smith, when they have that extended reach, they are able to, again, get better shots, get better opportunities for takedowns, and it also allows them to defend from Braden Davis, who just doesn't have as far of a reach. So that's something that they're going to have to work on, finding a way around that small disadvantage there. But Braden Davis, so it's the same point here with what I just said about Jacob Van D for Nebraska. Braden Davis is going, and like Levi Haynes a season ago, don't worry, we're going to talk about Levi Haynes, Carter Starachi, Aaron Brooks, and Greg Kirkfleet, and the rest of them. But for Braden Davis, right, this is about what's this going now moving forward, because these are the four wrestlers that really make or break what Penn State can do in the postseason. And Braden Davis is a true freshman, breaking that 125 curse, only second loss of the season. But Vinny Kilkiri of Ohio State should have had that takedown, and it should be 3 out of the last 4 should have been losses for Braden Davis here. Then you have Drake Ayala, and then this one against Caleb Smith. And for Braden Davis, who is a true freshman, it's the same thing. He is going to turn the corner. These are all learning experiences. He's still in the All-America conversation. Do I think that 125 is a roulette weight class? Absolutely, because you have no idea who's going to emerge out of this crowded field. Now that Spencer Lee's gone, there isn't this overly dominant top wrestler. The moment somebody's ranked number 1 or number 2, as we saw in the case of Braden Davis, and they get knocked down in the rankings because they suffer a loss, it's anybody's match any given day. And that can happen here with Braden Davis. He could catch fire. He could hit his stride as a young wrestler who is going through these learning experiences. Will correct these. I think he should wrestle in the Edinburgh match in the dual meet. I don't think he should have that Sunday off. That's another moment. Again, correct some small things, because this is your first postseason. So I am not concerned in the slightest. Yes, this is ugly defeat to a very talented wrestler, a veteran wrestler from Nebraska. But Braden Davis only has 2 losses. None of these are a cause for concern. Truax, I think, wrestled above what I was expecting him to. Kasak certainly did. Braden Davis a little lower, but because he's a younger wrestler, there is still a lot more potential waiting to be unlocked there. So for Penn State, yeah, you lost 4 bouts, the most that you've lost to any opponent, but you still win 22-13. You still win the Big Ten regular season, and because you have super dominant, over-the-top wrestlers that will be able to get a lot of bonus points for you in the postseason. But it's these 4 that, again, really make or break the historical aspect of what Penn State can do, what Penn State is chasing. The NCAA record for the most individual champions, the points record, getting 10 All-Americans to tie that. But you wanted those, that's the big 3 right there. And if Penn State's going to do that, it's those 4 wrestlers that are kind of teetering on this. Are they inside the All-America status? Are they outside? And for me, they sure enough built more confidence up for me as far as what they will do going into the postseason. But Levi Haynes, Bo Bartlett, Aaron Brooks, Carter Starachi, Greg Kirkfleet, all the rest of them, Mitchell Messenbrink, handled business in this one against Nebraska. We're going to talk about those bouts specifically coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing a lot of hats these days and might not have the time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The Locked On Podcast Network is making history. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it is available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app. Well, Penn State may have lost 4 individual bouts, but they also won 6, and they won the dual meet overall. And it was some of those momentum changing because Nebraska had won a couple in a row and started to build some momentum. It took the first half of the dual meet essentially, and it was never a sure thing. Penn State's used to being up by a bunch of points, scoring a lot of bonus points, and everything's put to rest by the time you get to Aaron Brooks and Greg Kirkfleet. But again, if you watch the preview show leading up to it, you knew that Nebraska was going to make this one difficult in the first half, and then Penn State would have to have mop-up duty with Carter Starachi, Aaron Brooks, and Greg Kirkfleet. I left Bernie Truax out at 184 because that one wasn't a sure thing. I leaned Lenny Pinto in that one, and Pinto did come up with the victory, even though Truax was so close. I think a matter of seconds. There were a few more seconds on the clock. He wins that one. But the most impressive match of the day goes to Levi Haynes, and it's not even close. Him and Peyton Robb were very close a season ago, and I know Levi Haynes leads that series now 3-0. But Peyton Robb, who's been around wrestling for a long time, I mean, what a human being, what a man, what a wrestler to go through what he's gone through and to wrestle at this top level still. There's all this motivation. He's continuing to write his story, but this pesky freshman, now a true sophomore, upended you in the Big Ten tournament and then in the NCAAs. And Levi Haynes showing that the distance has even further. The gap is even larger at this point in time. And it was back and forth, and it felt like, okay, Peyton Robb might at least, show that he can still hang around, that Levi Haynes is still number 1 in this weight class at 157. But Peyton Robb's going to have something to say about it. You're going to have to earn it. And then Levi Haynes, I don't know what got into him in the third period. But he hit a completely different gear against the number 7 wrestler at 157. He ends up with that 2-3 victory, but it was just all Levi Haynes. Peyton Robb had no answer. He looked gassed, and Haynes, again, proving just how good he is, because the stats going into it, Robb has more tech falls and, again, more impressive victories than Haynes, but Haynes just quietly just handles business. And I think that he is saving the arsenal. He does not have to show his full potential, his true strength here. He is reserving it, and when it needs to be turned on, it is turned on. And Haynes with an emphatic victory, but it's most impressive because he did that to a number 7 wrestler, a top 10 wrestler, and someone that he's matched up against multiple times now. This is the 3rd time that they've met, so there's familiarity to this. It's different when it's the first time they wrestled, and you got to understand, try to feel each other out. What does he like to do? What does he like to do? And not in this case. Haynes and Rob know each other, and Haynes got the better of them for a third time now, and the best victory of the trio. I hope these two see each other again in Big Tens as well as NCAAs, because it is just an exciting dual meet. Let's move to 197, because Aaron Brooks going up against Silas Allred, who is top 15 in his own right, and gets a major decision, teetering on a tech fall. 17-4 the final. Aaron Brooks truly going out with a bang in his final season as a Penn State wrestler on this team. Of course, he'll continue to work with the wrestling club, but on this varsity squad, it's you just have to take it all in with the way that how competitive Brooks is, how talented he is, and doing this, there is such a gap between himself and the rest of the competition at 197. Silas Allred, again, top 15. You would expect that one to be okay, maybe because of how good Aaron Brooks is. Maybe this is like an 8-point deficit, right? But no, it starts to teeter into a tech fall territory, 17-14. That's a difference of 13 points. You're one takedown away from tech falling a top 15 wrestler, and Silas Allred is a veteran as well, moving up into the 197 weight class, just like Aaron Brooks did. But with changing weight classes, facing newer competition, it seems like Brooks is in, again, a place of his own, a league of his own against the rest of the competition. And Levi Haynes and Aaron Brooks, because you were able to do that against that kind of competition, is all the more impressive, and why Penn State again is in this conversation of breaking historical bounds with this team. Everybody, Carter Starachi, again, the win streak speaks for itself, right? You were at 63 consecutive victories. It is by far the longest streak here. Again, competition's different. You expected him to tech fall or pin his opponent against Bubba Wilson. Bubba Wilson's just very, very far behind in comparison to Carter Starachi. But that second half of the dual meet, it doesn't go the way that it does without Mitchell Messenbrink getting it started off. So Carter Starachi, of course, has a solid victory, right? But you expect him to. You expect him to win that way. You go, and why I want to focus on Mitchell Messenbrink in this case at 165 is because Messenbrink was down. We usually don't see Mitchell Messenbrink go down at this point, but Antrell Taylor, a freshman in his own right, another top 15 wrestler, and Messenbrink continues to have to almost prove doubters wrong. Just how far ahead is Messenbrink? Is he really a top 4 wrestler? Has him ranked 6th, 7th, right? Is he going to be? He's kind of in the rankings, farther in the All-America status. But we've talked about this a lot on the show. Jeff Byers, the voice of Penn State Wrestling, agrees with me that Mitchell Messenbrink is going to be one of the finalists around that finishes deep in the 165 weight class, no matter just how talented it is. But Messenbrink went down early, and then a come-from-behind victory like this against a fellow ranked wrestler, that changed the momentum completely. Of course, you had Haynes kind of wrapping things up and doing what happened with Peyton Robb there. But then, there's that bit of that halftime there. And then Mitchell Messenbrink, it's like, oh man, Nebraska is really keeping this one close. They still had the lead in the dual meet, and Messenbrink starts to pull Penn State back. They start to get back in the dual meet score. And so Messenbrink hasn't seen it all quite yet, because he hasn't met David Carr. He hasn't met Keegan O'Toole, who are both former NCAA champions. But with the matches that he's accumulated, whether it's against Michigan, Michigan State, now Nebraska, Ohio State, and Iowa, impressing against all the remaining competition that is right around there trying to vie for one of those semifinalist spots. I mean, Mitchell Messenbrink has proven that he is out in front. He's going to be the number 1 seed at the Big Ten tournament at 165, and he's certainly earned it, a 9-5 victory. But to come from behind like that, when you're usually playing out in front, when you're usually running with the lead, so Messenbrink, it's nice to see him win in different ways. Not much the same thing, kind of the same thing with Greg Kirkfleet. Not really much to comment there, just because at the level of competition, you have a football player doubling as a wrestler here for Nebraska, and that is very impressive to see. somebody that is a dual sport athlete, but you can tell that there's Kerkvliet who's working on his craft 24/7 versus somebody who's splitting his time between two sports. So I hope that benefits the Nebraska guy for football. For Kerkvliet, there really wasn't much to analyze. And what, 5 minutes of riding time? Over 5 minutes of riding time in the victory. Kerkvliet had no issues there. So there really wasn't anything to break down. You expected him to win. You expected him to maybe even start to teeter into a tech ball there. But a 10-0 major decision against an unranked wrestler was anticipated here at 285. I don't want to neglect Bo Bartlett here, because Bo Bartlett at 141 went up against Brock Hardy. And Bartlett, who was coming off of a matchup against Rutgers, unranked wrestler, had to win in the final seconds with a last-second takedown there. But you beat Real Woods. You beat Jesse Mendez, Iowa and Ohio State, respectively. And then you just kind of have, I don't want to say a dud, but you definitely wrestled down to the competition there, and some things happen. Not all matches are going to go your way, but you would expect Bo Bartlett to win that one decisively against an unranked wrestler. Brock Hardy, who is top 10, you got your decisive victory here. 7-2 the final. Bo Bartlett, outside of the first period, took control for the remainder of the match and continues to show that he is number one at 141. He's going to be the number one seed at the Big Ten tournament. He's undefeated to this point. And Bo Bartlett he's been such a team player. I know the Penn State wrestling diehard fans and wrestling fans a whole that have followed Penn State closely, but maybe some other people that, are starting to learn more about Penn State wrestling. Bo Bartlett deserves a lot more credit as just a team player. He was not the 149 wrestler. I mean, he started there, but his weight class is 141. He was wrestling outside of his comfort zone and was still finishing the way that he did. Took third place a year ago and now has really settled in. And the guys that he was losing to, the guys that he was struggling against a season ago, and it was a hard fight to get to that bronze medal match and take third place. But now you've seen him turn a corner in what could or could not be his final season. Watch the interviews. He talked about possibly coming back. He also talked about him wrestling like this was his final season, but he hasn't made a decision yet. But for Bartlett to go through 149, and I think that benefited him in the long run, to wrestle up a weight class and early in his career, and then finally settle back in his comfort zone at his weight class of 141. And now you're seeing all of that pay off. You're seeing positive ramifications from that. And there's a clear distance between himself and other competitors in this weight class. It's still going to be tough. 141 is still very difficult. And look at how much talent is in the Big Ten. Brock Hardy, Real Woods, Jesse Mendez, those four could, and with Bo Bartlett, those four could all be All-Americans, probably will be All-Americans at the NCAA. So the Big Ten is already loaded with talent at 141 pounds, and Bo Bartlett is leading the race in front of all of them. So Penn State just has one more dual meet here against Edinboro. What can we expect to see in the final regular season bout before they go into the postseason? Let's talk about that on the other side of this break. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players, NBA teams with things like quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. And you can bundle all of those bets together that you like into one parlay and have the boosted odds and the boosted winnings to go along with it. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Remember, if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest analysis around your favorite Penn State teams. We talk more than just football here. We talk wrestling, men's basketball, men's hockey, recruiting, all of it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And in this final segment, Penn State has Edinboro to finish up the regular season. You're already the Big Ten champions of the regular season, but you have a tune-up opportunity to get ready for the Big Ten postseason and NCAAs. And it's also a glimpse into the future here, because you could potentially, I'm interested to see not only who's going to wrestle, but who are they going to honor with the senior ceremony, as this is the final home dual meet. It's senior day. Greg Kirkfleet may or may not come back next season. Carter Starachi still has the additional eligibility. Bo Bartlett's in a similar situation. We know that Aaron Brooks and Bernie Truax are going to move on here, but those five. Now, you have a nice base for the starting lineup for 2024-25 with, of course, Levi Haynes as the headliner, Mitchell Messenbrigg, Braden Davis, Aaron Nagao, and then Shane Van Ness is going to come back, Tyler Kasak, right? So what they're going to decide here and there, it's really going to get interesting based on what does Bartlett decide? What does Greg Kirkfleet decide? You're in good hands with Cochran taking over at 197 for Aaron Brooks, Josh Barr at 184. So I'm just intrigued to see who is actually going to wrestle on senior day, because it is senior day, but it's also a match where you don't need to see Carter Starachi wrestle. You don't need to see Aaron Brooks wrestle. You don't need to see Greg Kirkfleet wrestle. Again, I could name all of them. You don't need to see them wrestle. This is an opportunity where I want to see Lucas Cochran. I want to see Josh Barr wrestle at their weights. You know, it's nice to see Cochran move up to 285 and get victories against ranked or top 10 wrestlers when he's given up, 40, 50, 60 pounds, because he's the 197 wrestler and going up against what could, assume 285, right? But I want to see Cochran at 197. I want to see Josh Barr at 184. I want to see the future a little bit of this lineup, but I also don't want to take away that opportunity if it is their last, if it is truly their last. Carter Starachi can improve on that winning streak, right? He can add another one and continue to make history for himself personally while chasing that national title once again here. In the case, but and this dual meet is also important for wrestlers who, again, are not performing to the best of their abilities. I want to see Braden Davis in this bout, even though you don't need to. I want to see Aaron Nagao. I think this is an excellent opportunity for those two specifically, who are, if Penn State's going to make history as a team at NCAAs, Braden Davis and Aaron Nagao are the ones that are, again, need to be a part of this in order to push the team forward here. So Nagao and Davis not wrestling at their best down the stretch here, but that's why tune-up matches are important. You figure out the little things, you can test some things out while still getting a victory in the process and building confidence, but also working on the little things and what you need to work on. So, and again, if this is the last season for Bartlett and Kirkfleet, I wonder, do they wrestle? Do they not wrestle? So the lineup's going to be a conversation in itself to see how many backups are actually in. Does Terrell Barraclaw get in on the action as well? Who else are we going to see in the lineup against Edinburgh for Penn State? So it's really a mystery here. But I think senior day, that Aaron Brooks wants to wrestle. That Carter Starachi wants to wrestle. They don't want to say, well, we're taking the day off because this is Edinburgh and we got to focus on the postseason. This is also senior day. This might be the last time that they wrestle in Rec Hall. For some of them, we know in the case, again, of Brooks, that this is his last go around. But for other guys, they have the option to use that final year of eligibility. And it'll answer, I think we'll get some clarity, not all of it, until they verbally say in an interview or make their decision publicly on a social media platform saying, I am coming back or I am moving on to focus on XYZ. But it gives you a slight hint at what's going on for their futures. And it also gives you a glimpse as far as what Penn State is going to look like. Because this stretch of dominance, right? Penn State's trying to win 11 out of 13 national championships here as a team. 11 of the last 13. So you want to know, is Penn State going to be able to continue that? Are they going to win 12 out of 14 with next year's lineup? Because if you do lose Kirkfleet, Brooks, Truax, Starachi, Bartlett, who are all right now all of them are in the All-America conversation, but there are 4 national championship bona fide national championship contenders. You want Bernie Truax to be in that conversation. But for those guys, they are the clear-cut favorites in their respective weight classes, obviously, because they're number one. They're the number 1 seed right now. So that's my point. What is the team going to look like? Can Josh Barr be ready to go and take over at 184 and be at the top of his game? At 197 is Lucas Cochran all he's cracked up to be, and can he be an immediate All-America wrestler right out of the gate? They've shown some flashes, but it just gives us another perspective at what that lineup for Cale Sanderson will look like next year. So next season is never too far away, just so we all know. But Penn State it's still an opportunity to fine tune the little things, work on the mistakes that have been going on throughout the season so that they don't show up again in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament alike. Plus, you can get that potential perspective of what a Cale Sanderson-led 2024-2025 lineup might look like in due time. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And I can't finish the show without mentioning what the Thon community has done and accomplished over this weekend. Nearly $17 million raised. That's right. Nearly $17 million raised to fight back against childhood cancer. FTK for the kids. What an amazing movement. The work that has been accomplished, what has been done over the course of your planning for this 46-hour event and everything in between. The largest student-run philanthropy group in the country, in the world. And it speaks for itself. Just all the time, the energy, the blood, sweat, and tears poured into this movement and fighting back against childhood cancer. Just I tip my hat to everybody that was involved in Thon's event and all the work that was raised to get nearly $17 million to go into the research and the battle against childhood cancer. Coming up this week on Locked On Nittany Lions, we'll hear from Cale Sanderson again, probably a senior or two with weekly media availability. Talk some more football, men's basketball. Where do they go from here after back-to-back losses? They were doing so well, and now they're not. It's all going to be right here. Conversations around your favorite Penn State teams with Locked On Nittany Lions.